Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on streamlining finance and HR collaboration. I'm Arun Sadagopan. I'm the sales director for Jedox, and I will be the one who's presenting this webinar along with my colleague, Soren Luther, who's a consultant in solution advisory. So the agenda that we have for today's webinar is we are going to start off with talking about the critical issues that is currently impacting the workforce, followed by how unified workforce planning is going to help organization. And then I would hand it over to Soren, who's going to demo Jedox solution for you on how it can help your organization in managing and unifying your workforce planning. And towards the end, we are going to have question and answers. We wanted to make this webinar interactive. So what we have done is we have included certain polls so that you can contribute to while the presentation is happening. At any point, if you have any questions, then please enter it in the question box, and we would answer that towards the end of the webinar. So moving on, the critical issues that is currently impacting the workforce. We live in an uncertain time, but we have been asked to deliver more and to grow our business. The biggest asset every organization has is their employees. And we have been faced with the challenges of hiring new talents or at the same time to retain the existing talents that we have. We see that some organization has introduced inflationary bonuses as a benefit to their employees so that they can ease the impact of inflations on their employees' life. And the world is becoming much more competitive. So we are finding it difficult even to attract or hire new talents, be it in any field, be it in finance, be it in HR or in sales. One thing which the pandemic has taught us is that we have to constantly upskill ourselves, reskill ourselves, do a bit of an unlearning and learn new things or new ways in which we should hit the market. So as if I can recall my experience, my own experiences, as a sales director, I meet with my prospects and customers face to face, build relationship with them, and I position the value of Jedox, and then the sales process moves on to the closure. When the pandemic hit, what worked for me on my job as a sales director before, for the last 10 years that I've been in the business, did not work because there was no face-to-face interaction that was happening. It was more via Teams, via Zoom, which was a new medium, and it was a new way that I need to interact with my business, and I need to create that human touch. And that's something which I had to learn because of the changes that happened in my work. Similarly, you can see that when we moved into a hybrid model of working from home, our organization has the challenges of keeping their employees engaged, making them much more productive. It was a bit of a difficult that they faced. Now, when we are back to the normal, now the organization are facing the people resigning because they don't want to come back to the office, and they got used to working from home and they wanted to stay there. So these challenges that keeps coming in. And what we have also seen is the lack of collaboration that is existing between finance and HR teams. Now, if I can bring that into a perspective, a CHRO, let's assume that a CHRO or a HR manager walks into the CFO's office with an agenda of increasing this budget for training the employees that he's having. So he goes into the CFO and he makes his pitch saying, we are in a competitive environment. We have to upskill our employees so that they can excel against the competitions that we are facing in the market. And obviously the money that he put in front of the CFO is quite huge. So the CFO, he himself is under the stress of increasing margin and to reduce cost. He looks at it and he asks a question to the CHRO. What if we train our employees and they leave us? HR manager thought for a while and then he responded back saying, what if we don't invest in training them and they stay with us? With that, I would like to start my first poll, in which I would like to know how your interactions been with your CFOs, if it's there. So I would be happy if you can answer that question. And the question is, how often do your HR and your finance team collaborate? Does it happen never, or is it infrequently, somewhat frequently, or you do that quite often? I can see the polls are coming in. Let me give another 30 seconds for you to answer. Thank you. I think I can close the poll now. And if I can look at the results, we see that it's somewhat frequently is what most of them have answered. And very often, I can see that I'm pretty sure that because of the pandemic and because of having an integrated business plan, that's the reason why you can see that very often that you are starting to have that collaboration. And infrequently is something which is I also see around 28%. So this is where Jedox will help you. So as a Jedox as a solution, what it helps you is to unify your HR and finance. So it's basically what it does is extending your planning outside of the Office of Finance to integrate it with your HR. So this is where Jedox supports you in terms of extending your planning outside of the Office of Finance to have much more integrated with your HR. So what this will help you is this will help you in strengthening your feedback loop between finance and HR, and everybody looks at the same data. So there is a complete story, is something which you would be able to see. So if you go back to my case of where the finance CFO was asking a question to the CHRO, because he was able to see only the budget that was asked in front of him, rather not the whole complete picture. So this is what will, and that's one of the reasons why he asked that question. So if we have a complete picture of it, then he would have directly stepped into it, and maybe he would be one of the one who would have initiated for asking, going with increasing your budgets in terms of training your employees. So with unifying the workforce planning, the other benefit it will do is it increases your efficiency in your planning process. So you spend more time on analyzing it and rectifying it rather than spending time in collecting these data and coming up with a story. And these are some of the customers of Jedox who have went through unifying their HR and workforce planning. And some of the brands might be closer to your heart. And for me, for instance, A6 is something which I use quite frequently. I see that they have been using our solutions to unify the HR and excelling into the Jedox solutions. So for this, the next part of the demo, what we wanted to do is that we have picked in a scenario. And the scenario is basically an organizations who have basically they are having an issue of misalignment between the HR and finance, which is leading them into a loss of revenue. And the challenges that they are currently facing is basically that their entire planning process is not efficient, and they are not able to do ad hoc analysis or ad hoc reporting. And what they are looking for is to do planning or bottom-up planning and driver-based planning. And they would like to have a streamlined integrations, meaning that they can pull in the data of HCM and finance into one place, and so that they can do ad hoc analysis on it. So the desired outcome that they are expecting is to make the planners much more efficient in terms of doing their planning exercise and spending time in analyzing it. And they would like to increase the number of forecast versions of it. With that, I would like to hand it over to my colleague Soren, who would then walk you through the demo.
Thank you, Arun. So just quickly to stay on this slide for a second, the demo that I will be showcasing now is having three parts to it. So first, we're going to look into workforce planning and salaries and wages, so the typical HR planning. We're then going to see how those numbers and figures are going to flow into our financial statements, so the profit and loss, OPEX, and so on. And then at the end, we're going to kind of tie it all together up using a more proactive view in looking at how to use both the HR data, but also the finance data, in project planning, in capacity planning, and basically just seeing how Jedox can be used as a integrated business planning tool. So I will present my screen now in a second. And you should hopefully see my screen right now. So what I have here is a typical dashboard that gives me my relevant information. It gives me some actuals, you can see up here, and it gives me the budget, and then it allows me to compare my figures. Now, one important disclaimer before we go too deep into some of these reports is that Jedox isn't a predefined application. So you have the possibility, the ability to customize and bring in your own KPIs and your own report structures that are relevant for your business and the roles, the specific roles. And bringing in you could say the roles in here also allows you to talk about security, which is, especially when we're talking HR, is particularly important. So when we talk about salary information, so Jedox has the ability to constrain the access for what people have access to, for what they have access to update. Which is really important, especially when we're talking HR data, which can be quite sensitive. So with that being said, if we look at the typical dashboard, we can then bring in a lot of the different data that is relevant for our HR. So this is, you could say, the end user tool. So what I will show now is how we're actually populating this dashboard with numbers, so the numbers behind. So I'm going to start with showing an overview of a department. So I am in a single department, in this case the management department, for a single legal entity. This data here is something that I have pre-populated, but this is also something that we typically see is integrated from other source systems, such as Personio or Paycor or other systems. So typically, we don't see customers starting off on a blank page in every planning cycle and then add the data. It's typically something which is imported from a source system, and then you only do the incremental changes. So in this case, let's assume that Solly put on in June. He's gonna step down on half time. So I'm gonna reduce his FTE number by half. I get a little summary over here. That kind of gives me the full FTE effect. And then because Solly is leaving, I want a replacement for him, which I can do down here, and I can add an employee, but in this case I want to replace Solly. So we're just going to name an unknown replacement, a webinar employee. And because I've picked Solly here, I can just simply press this button, and then I'm copying in Solly with, but basically with a new name element. So in this case, I am copying in the relevant information. You can see, actually, maybe I should have copied in before I took them out, because I also copied in the FT number. So now I'm going to show you the next report, and this is a very detailed report that allows me, in this case, to adjust Solly's salary. Again, this is something that is typically integrated within a payroll system. so you don't have to add the salary of every employee all the time. We also often see customers who have, you could say, this type of report merged with the other reports I just showed, so to have just one unified report. That is also totally possible. If we look at the on-target earnings, you can see that even though we have a full-time base salary of the 7,000, we can see that from June, where I actually took or reduced Solly's FTE number, that the on-target earning has been reduced. So let me jump to the next report, because one thing is adjusting the base salary itself, but often in a company with payrolls, you have a lot of other personal costs. And in this case, this is a good example of showing some of Jedox driver-based capabilities. So in this case, for Solly, I have a lot of different social costs, which is centrally run from this parameter sheet. So let's just take this over here. So in this case, Solly has been assigned to a country, Germany. Again, being total modifiable, this can also be if you only have companies or a company with only one legal entity. You might want to maybe have collective bargains agreements that have different kinds of benefits that you need to calculate. This could also be changed to the collective bargains agreements. What we see here is a centrally run parameter sheet. So if for health insurance, you can see that for full-time it's 9%, but for part-time it's 7.3%. And let's say I want to bring up my part-time employees to 9%, and I want to actually increase my full-times to 12%. Then when I close this, you can see immediately the health insurance for Solly changed, so it increased, and it's a good way of showing the driver capabilities that we have in Jedox. I also have the possibility of adding, you could say, just directly adding line items. So sometimes it's not always a driver. It could be that I have some cost evenly distributed for Solly. So you can see what I'm doing now is I'm marking the cell, the various cells, just like you would do in Excel, and I'm giving it 100, and then I've added 100 to every month for this line item. Now we've been very detailed focused with a specific employee, which is fine, but sometimes you also want a bit of a more high level view. In this case, I went to the next report, our cost center report. So all the salaries and wages, they are summarized here. So that's for all the employees in the management cost center for the Acme legal entity. And again, I have the possibility here of adding various line items. So in this case, I have marketing spend. So if I want to say that we're running a let's say webinar in July, I can just go in and add a line item here that are then either distributed evenly down on my different items, or I can add it directly on an item. All of this is then summed up, and then it is being and then it's being added to my, let me go to my profit and loss here. Just a second. So again, now we're in the total legal entity. So my administrative expenses, which is where my wages were before, is now updated down here. And if this is a little bit, how did it get here? I have a driver tree, if you like it to be more visual. So in this case, we were planning on the HR So first we were planning FTEs, and then we were planning the salaries. We added line items for the cost centers, and that is then flowing down into the P&L. Now going back to my HR planning, I also have the possibility, if you're more visually, then you have the possibility again of adding a dashboard for this. So in this case, an OPEX dashboard, which is again accumulating various different costs. So in this case, I have my general administration, the administrative expense we just saw in the P&L, but I also have, let's say, cost of sales. I can have IT shares. I can have various KPIs. I can have both visual interactive tables, charts, and I can also have a bit of a more, you could say, typical drill down table that can show me again a lot of line items. And this will obviously be your individual chart of account or line items that will be shown down here. What I also have here is a integration to Teams to increase collaboration. So one thing is that it's being presented to me as an end user what is happening, but we also want to increase the focus on collaboration. In this case, the head of all the cost centers, Juliana Fischer, is added down here. And I can then directly from this dashboard press this icon, and then I can have then I can directly send an email from this dashboard to Juliana, asking questions, giving my remarks, and so on. So this is a way of really increasing the collaboration. It's the same thing with, let's say I want to schedule a Teams meeting. I can open up Microsoft Teams from this dashboard and then schedule a meeting immediately. So you don't have to go back and forth between your systems. Have it readily available right here. Now, going a little bit into more, you could say, planning phase, we also have our Excel add-in. I'm going to show you an example of how Jedox is actually integrated with different systems. So, typical Excel, I have my Jedox add-in up here. And I'm going to show you what we call a view, a page view. So I'm pressing this new view, and I get a pop-up, which is very similar to a pivot table. So in this case, I'm choosing my database, which I have a lot of because I'm doing a lot of webinars and demos. The ones that we're looking at is this one. And then I'm going to go down to my personal cost cube. And I want to look at, I want to have a version. I want to look at the different personnel costs. And then I have, then I'm adding my filters up here. And I press the small button here, and I say that I want to look at my budget, and I want to look at a variance. I copy this in, and I can take, maybe I want to look at salaries and wages and non-labor costs. So again, simple drag and drop. I can then again go find my legal entity. So in this case, I was in the German legal entity. I can even go drill down on the cost center. So I find the management cost center that we looked at before. And then I have, maybe I want to go into 2024, which we were planning before. So again, now I have from the same cost center, I can see my wages and salaries for the entire 2024 budget. We don't have any actuals for 24 yet, so I have no variance. And then I can have this Excel add-in being interactive. I have the various items down here. I can also actually go back into my view here, and then I can save the view. So I can say save as. And then I have a pane down here where all my stored views or my saved paste views are. So in this case, I have another one pre-populated. So if I paste this in, you can see this is actually a similar table to the one we just planned in. So I also have the possibility of bringing in actually the reports that I have in the web back into Jedox. Then I can save this as my webinar, which I have already done. And then I can publish my my spreadsheet back into the reports, which I has already done as well. Now, just to see a little bit about what can you then use it for, because this is obviously also something you can do in Excel, but you can then close this one. Second. What I want to show you is how we can then use the information we had in our Excel spreadsheet in this dashboard. So I have opened up the dashboard here. So again, this is now I'm in what we call the designer. So this is where we can design our dashboards. So what I want is I want to add the spreadsheet, which I just created and uploaded. And I can press this worksheet element. I just have to go down to where I saved it. So in this case, my platform. Then I have my HR webinar, which I saved. And then I get all the different things that I saved. So in this case, I only had the web sheet. So you can see up here, we can pull in different charts and so on if we construct them in the web. We also have the possibility of dragging in, let's say, a new KPI. So if I want to drag in a KPI, I can start adding my data to this, and then the KPI will be pre-populated. I can add comparison value if I want to compare the data I have with a variance. So in this case, it automatically gives me the percentage calculation version, let's say a budget, actuals versus budget. But I can also just, let me just delete this just a second, this KPI. But I can also pull in the entire workbook that I just created before. So if I pull it in here, you can see this is the workbook I created before. So I now have the possibility of creating something in Excel, and then I can just simply drag and drop it into my HR dashboard. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to go back to, I have to find the correct dashboard here. You can see now it's available to me here, and you can then add all the different formatting and the colors and whatever you like to have it fit into your current dashboard. So it's just to show that it's quite easy whenever you do these reports in Excel to bring them into the web, also bring them into the HR dashboard. We emphasize this again because we really want these dashboards to increase the collaboration across the business, across the support functions, and basically just increase the transparency. It's really important to say here that whenever I create something in the web or in the Excel add-in, the security level that I mentioned in the beginning that is in this HR dashboard is also the same security level that is in the Excel add-in. So if I don't have access to the payroll data, it doesn't help me to just open up an Excel sheet. I still don't have access to the payroll data. And if someone is publishing this spreadsheet in a dashboard that I have access to, I still won't be able to see the numbers in this spreadsheet. So the security is transferred between the different platforms. So now I just quickly want to pause a little bit and then have you think about the the slide that we showed right in the beginning, where I showed a little bit about first the classical HR data, talked a little bit about the financial statements, which is what I showed here in the different dashboards, in the OPEX dashboards, etc. But we also want to emphasize that all of these HR data, both the FTE count, but also the financial data associated with it, it's not just for reporting purpose. You can also use it for planning purpose. So what I want to do is I want to go down to my capacity plan down here. Now this says project overview because it's, in this case, I am using projects as an example, but you can use this also for programs or for other, you could say, capacity planning that isn't necessarily connected to a project. So in this case, I have a portfolio of projects, and in this portfolio, I have a couple of different projects. I have an assigned project manager. I also have the possibility of adding a project activity, and let me just add a project activity. So in this case, I can add a project activity, and you can see it's not started yet. So we have different phases. So let's say it's not started, and then I can add it. And then I'm going to go into my, let me just show you the project activity. So you can see, oh, I actually had that one for go live, but I can start editing the activities as well. Since I have two non-started activities, let's go ahead and plan these activities. So this takes me to the, you could say, the capacity planning or the resource planning of this project. So again, I have an overview here of the project. You can see I already have assigned two employees with their yearly hours and the hours allocated to the project per month. I can even fold it out and then have it based on the different days. These the amount of hours per day is something that's generated from a calendar function. So this is also something that can be adjusted to different countries, different collective bargains agreement, or basically just if you have also maybe, let's say, your holiday leave calendar in Jedox, you can also add the holiday leave for the different employees, and then their amount of availability will decrease the days that they're on leave. So again, this can be run centrally to whatever time dimension that you would like. If I want to get an overview of my employees' availability, I have, in this case, a heat map availability. So this is structured for legal entity and for all the employees, but it can also be structured into even just on a cost center level. And you can also have it filtered so you have it on a project level. So if you want this the project overview, if you want that presented in a heat map as well, you can do it. So up here, I can see that our good friend Solly, which we also planned a bit before, has some availability in 2023. And if you go to 24, you can see when we decreased his FTE, the amount of hours that he has available from June and onwards is cut in half. I also have the possibility of setting an hourly rate. This is what generates the revenue. So if I want to increase it on the different project, on the different activities, I can do that. I also have the, you could say that the total availability down here. So let me just add in June. I'm going to add him as Heimbeck Bowl as a full FTE, and you can see it gives me a warning because you can see it only has 84 hours available. but I'm assigning him 168 hours. So it gives me a warning that he's over capacity. So I'm just going to delete that. And then I'm going to find an employee which will have a bit more. Let me just check again my map here. So we have a couple of different. So Bjørnstjerne Bjørnson should be available for a half FTE. And then I can assign him to my project as well. So now that I have planned my capacity on my projects, I want to show you the impact that this planning has on the finance. So I have gone to the project P&L, which is generating a revenue and the personal cost associated with this. And all of this, you can see, it's not something that I can plan. I cannot press any of this because this is something that is driven from the HR cube, from the personal cost cube, when I'm then planning. And then it's simply just taking the information we have stored in the project and adding it to the project P&L. And then obviously this is also collected in, you can say, up on an aggregated level. So if I go to my finance dashboard, I have the possibility, go back to 2023. I have the possibility here of looking into both some revenue numbers, which we had driven both by the project. We have an EBIT, but we also have a bit more details about accounts payables, sales outstanding. We have a cash ratio. We also have the possibility again of an interactive table down in the bottom, which we can then kind of start to drill on, and then I can go down even further. And the same thing with this. So this is something that is again being pre-populated from all the other aspects that I have just showed, and it's the same again with the HR dashboard. So I hope that it became a little bit clear on how things can be connected between HR and finance, but also business planning. And then I am going to hand it back to Arun for some wrap up. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Soren. Appreciate it. So now this is the time for our second poll of the day. And I'm just launching the poll now. And the question is, where do you see the most value for your organization? Is it by reducing time on manual tasks, or more scenarios to consider, driver-based forecast accuracy, or is it unified view of information speeds decision making, or is it strategic goal alignment? And we know that it can be more than one, so that's the reason why we have provided you with a checkbox to pick more than one. I can see some polls coming in. The more percentage now is towards the unified view of information. Yes, I completely agree. That gives you the whole story. And I can see a similar importance towards driver-based forecast accuracy as well. So I'm going to close the poll now and to share the results. So you see that most of you, around 73% of you, have requested for unified view of information. So yes, I'm not surprised with that results, because having the complete picture. It's instead of having it in jigsaw puzzle, there's the whole puzzle which has been solved, would give you complete information, and at the same time, the same story has been told. And driver-based forecast accuracy is the way forward, because that increases that you know that what drivers are impacting your business. At the same time, completely automating it, because you don't want to waste time in preparing the data. Rather, you let the system to do that things for you. So that's good. So now let me hide the results and getting back into my presentation. So as an organization with Jedox, you don't need to start everything from the scratch. So we have built, based on our experience, dealing with more than thousands of implementation, especially in unifying HR and finance planning. So we have come up with the best practice accelerators. This is going to be a boost for you to adapt to some of the best practices that we offer. And it comes with pre-built KPIs, pre-built dashboards that you saw, which Soren was presenting. And it also comes with the business rules, which we are able to learn from our implementation across different industries and different size of customers. And it also comes with the normal usage rights. But these can be a starter kit for you to kickstart your implementation. You can customize it. That's the best thing about Jedox, is more about adaptability and flexibility that we offer as a product. So you can customize, but you can use this as a starting point so that you don't need to start from the scratch. And this would help you to get the value faster with our best practice accelerator. With that, we have come to the question and answer side, and we are open to answer some questions. And I can see, I do see that Mr. Walker Rudnick has raised his hand. I would appreciate it, Walker, if you can actually ask the question on the question box, which is on the screen. That would be helpful for us. And the first question that I can read is, can you manage all your employee cost in one report instead of multiple reports that you have showed? Well, the answer is yes, of course. So what Soren was showing is mostly in terms of a demo templates. And you can create and you can customize the planning reports based on your requirement. Jedox gives you the full flexibility for that. And the second question that I see is, we budget our employees based on job title and location with the standard cost rate. Can this be achieved in Jedox? I think, Soren, you are the right person to answer that.
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit related to the first question as well, but of course you can. It's just a matter of changing the dimensions to showcase job titles rather than employees, and then add another dimension for locations. So that shouldn't be an issue.
Perfect. And third question that we have is, we have different departments planning differently. Can Jedox support this, or we lock down to planning at a certain level with certain inputs? No. So the good thing about Jedox is it's more flexibility and adaptability. We don't enforce you to follow one way of planning what we have built as a pre-built content, but we rather want to build the way that you plan. We give you the complete flexibility for you to plan the way that you want it to plan. And if you wanted to do it on the departments differently, that's fine. But the beauty of Jedox is that it just rolls up into, I mean, you can plan differently, but then all of those things are automatically consolidated at a group level or the roll-up levels that you might have. Then I can see a question on, can you connect to multiple HR, payroll, and PSA systems? We have numerous entities, and they all have different systems. Soren, if you can answer that.
Yeah, sure. So we can integrate to a lot of different systems. Jedox comes with what we call a full ETL component. So basically what it means is that we can do the entire connection, extraction of data, transforming the data, and then put it into Jedox. And we can do it from a multiple of different technologies and systems, and we can most definitely do it with multiple HR and payroll systems. Yes.
Perfect. So there is time for one more question before we close down the session. So I think there is a question now. Is best practice accelerators available on knowledge base? Soren, again, if you can answer
No, they're
this
not
one.
available on the knowledge database. They are available in our marketplace. I can't remember exactly how they are structured in our marketplace, because some of the accelerators are dependent on others. So I cannot remember whether you have to download one or multiple different accelerators, but we can come back on that where it's where and how it's available. I'm going to note it down and yeah.
Perfect. So I do see a few more questions, but since we are running out of time, we would respond those questions separately after the end of the sessions. And you can reach us out if you would like to dive deep into our demo. We'd be happy to do a product demonstration highlighting something which would be of interest to you. And thank you all for joining us today.